Yes, of course I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong about any number of things.
On September 23rd, 2010, I accompanied my MA supervisor, Professor Anthony J. Hall, to a lecture at the University of Lethbridge entitled Why People Believe Weird Things, delivered by Dr. Michael Shermer. Professor Hall is a full professor and founding coordinator of the Globalization Studies Unit at the University of Lethbridge. Shermer was advertised on the University of Lethbridge webpage as the founding publisher of Skeptic magazine, executive director of the Skeptic Society, and adjunct professor of economics at Claremont Graduate University.
Yeah, I noticed that in the articles you published on 9/11, Michael, you have made a couple of really egregious factual errors, and I'll just leave those aside. So here's the question. Do you consider the possibility that you may not be a real skeptic, but rather a true believer in skepticism, and you're applying a pattern recognition thing on all of reality in order to think that any unorthodox thoughts must be wrong and the orthodox ones must all be right?
Oh! Practically made my brain hurt. It was like four.
That was my idea.
4 double negatives in there. Yes, of course I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong about any number of things.
Michael Shermer, to the shock of Professor Hall and I, invoked the generic label conspiracy theorist to attempt to smear such professionals who investigate 9/11.
But of course, that's not what the conspiracy theorists think is the right conspiracy. They think it was an inside job. An inside job by none other than Bush.
Those who dispute the official conspiracy theory of 9/11 stands in stark contrast to the diligent methodology of scholars such as David Ray Griffin.
For those Americans who accept the official interpretation, 9/11 was a surprise attack on the U.S. government and its people by Islamic terrorists. For some Americans, 9/11 has a more complex meaning. The second group, while accepting the official interpretation of the attacks, thinks of 9/11 primarily as an event that was used opportunistically by the Bush administration to extend the American empire. This interpretation is effectively presented by writers such as Noam Chomsky, Rahul Mahajan, and Chalmers Johnson. For a third group of Americans, the name 9/11 connotes an event with a more sinister dimension.
Shocked and stunned by Michael Shermer's unscholarly approach to 9/11 studies, and perplexed by his general disregard for those members of the Academy who have critically investigated 9/11, Professor Hall and I undertook in-depth research into the substandard satirist Shermer. We were particularly concerned that the estimable Claremont Graduate University, which produced the Dean of 9/11 Studies, David Ray Griffin, was having its name besmirched globally by the unskeptical, vulgar rhetorician Michael Shermer. As Professor Hall canvassed the website of the Claremont Graduate University, he stumbled across something which could have profound implications for Claremont, the University of Lethbridge, and the Academy in general. On the list of adjunct professors of economics at the Claremont Graduate University, Michael Shermer's name was noticeably absent. Yet, Michael Shermer had been advertised to the students, faculty, and members of the public attending his lecture as adjunct professor of economics at Claremont Graduate University, thus providing a veneer of authority to cloak his poorly researched lecture. Professor Hall immediately contacted Dean Schrodel, who is the Dean of the School of Politics and Economics at Claremont. Hall wrote, "I noticed when I checked your faculty website, I did not see Dr. Shermer listed among the adjunct professors of economics. Does this absence result from a mistake of your webmaster, or is Dr. Shermer misrepresenting himself and his relationship with your school?" Dean Schrodel responded tersely, stating, "I have absolutely no idea who this man is." Professor Hall then contacted the president of Claremont Graduate University, Dr. Joseph C. Hoff, to corroborate the obvious conclusion which could be drawn from Dean Schrodel's comment, namely that Michael Shermer is not an adjunct professor of Economics at Claremont Graduate University. In response to Professor Hall's email, the Claremont president opined, "I did not know anything about Professor Shermer until I received your email and did some quick research. He, Shermer, does not hold any term or permanent appointment in the university." I sent an email to a known accomplice of Shermer's, Professor Paul Zach, who is a professor at Claremont Graduate University. In response, I received an email from Michael Shermer, who wrongly thought that I'd be intimidated by the fact that he'd forwarded the email to administrators at my university. That's the same officials who failed to properly check Shermer's purported credentials before advertising him as an adjunct professor of economics at the Claremont Graduate University. In that same email, he leveled an ad hominem attack on Professor Hall, comparing him personally to a well-known Holocaust denier. I responded to Shermer in an email in which I stated, "I notice that you provide no evidence to confirm that you hold the position of adjunct professor of economics at Claremont Graduate University, as you were advertised to an audience at my university. Was the University of Lethbridge misled to believe that you hold that appellation when in fact you do not? I think this is a serious matter." Shermer's reply was very curious indeed. He wrote, "If I am, as some have suspected, an agent of disinformation for the US government to divert attention away from the real 9/11 conspiracy, then you would think that they would have provided me with paperwork documenting my adjunct professorship, not to mention my doctorate. I have nothing to send you in that regard. I trust you will take my word for it." Neither Professor Hall nor I had raised the subject of who is or is not working as an agent for the US government. However, since Shermer raises the subject, it might be useful for the universities implicated in this fiasco to inquire who exactly is funding Michael Shermer and institutions such as Skeptic magazine, which promote egregiously unskeptical attitudes to those in power.
Well, it was great hanging out with you guys. It was a lot of fun.
My name is Eric Saber. I've done a lot of things in this area. I was in a presentation last year. I had a few questions for you.
Hold on.
What I'm going to do is offer you some information. This is from an organization called Engineers.
Yeah, I know all about this guy.
Okay.
I've read all their stuff.
Sure. Richard Gates is a really good close person friend of mine. This information he presents is scientific forensic evidence. And we're not claiming that things like that, but we are calling for a new investigation. I remember last year Kevin Baird giving me a question that possibly your academic position has led you to the point where you believe that your theories are correct.
It's not enough to say there's problems with the current explanation for the cause of the event. Because, of course, there's always going to be unexplained anomalies that are unanswered at the moment. That's the case with any claim, any theory, any paradigm. What positive evidence do you have in favor of your theory? That's the next step.
The point is, yeah, but here's the standpoint.
So, for example, like where are the debris from the demolition devices at Ground Zero and Building 7? If a missile hit the Pentagon, where's the pieces of the missile, and what happened to the American Airlines plane? Where'd that go? See, it's not enough for you to say, I don't know.
Sure, but
you got to give us an answer.
No, wait a second. Look, shouldn't we be thinking like insurance investigators and all of that? When somebody gives a story about how something happened, and there's a little fault in it, a little crack in the armor, the insurance investigator says, okay, your story doesn't hold water. Tell me now why it doesn't hold water. You look at the crack.
But it's not that it doesn't hold water because of one tiny little crack.
Well, we've got a lot of cracks. I mean, there's more than one crack. That's the problem.
Well, so tell me what you think happened. And don't tell me you're not going to say who you think.
Let's look at the cracks. Let's look at the cracks. The holes in the story.
I was in the military for 6 years. My job in the military was being a military demolition expert. I'm an expert in military explosives. When I look at Building 7, it is clearly my expert testimony would be that is an absolute clear-cut controlled demolition, straight down in its own footprint. Office fires don't do that. It defies the laws of physics. The thing is that when we debate people like you always want us to prove our side of the story. But the government has never...
Just tell us what you think.
What do
You
I
have to
think?
prove it, yeah.
I think that there's a lot more to the story than the 7 hijackers. The hijackers.
19 members.
The BBC reported half of them are still alive. I don't believe a single word from the Bush administration. I agree with the fact that the actual 9/11 Commission, 6 out of the 10 members say it wasn't a real investigation. And so I say we do need a real investigation because my opinion doesn't matter. Speculation is nothing but dust to the wind. We really do need to get to the truth of the matter.
Why do you need the government to do it? You do it. You're doing it.
We are doing it, but here's the thing: is we need to get the subpoena power in order to connect the dots. All we have
The
is
Freedom of Information Act will give you all this everything you need.
but then it always falls under this cloud of national security. So they're not going to really release a lot of these documents. They're really not. No matter where we go with this, at first it was angry, like, no, you're un-American and this and that. Now we're getting to the point where people are just kind of brushing us off, going, yeah, that was 10 years ago. When are you going to leave this stuff alone? And my point is, 3,000 Americans were murdered on September 11th. We got 1 million dead Iraqis. We're in 2 different wars of aggression. People around the world are suffering, and all of this has happened. Our civil liberties being rolled back. I mean, the whole nine, all because of 9/11.
Do you want to take this over because I need to go upstairs and see if other people are around.
I can only do so much research.
Oh, is it running right now?
I guess so. Okay, I've got to run upstairs.
Kind of legal power to back it up. Otherwise, all we are is not speculating back and forth and arguing. And really, opinions aren't going to
Did
get
you
us
see
anywhere.
the National Geographic special, the 2-hour special on 9/11 conspiracy?
Yes, I did.
The third line, all that stuff?
That same. Well, I know about them. I know exactly how it works. I've used it.
Didn't do anything at all. But
This is against the light there. This is better
see,
this
NIST,
way.
if you look at who did the NIST report, and you look at who did the Silverstein investigation, and you look at the other investigations that were done, it's almost the exact same people. It's like these people were specifically hired to, like, this is what we want for an output. I don't care how many big words you need to use, how many experts you need.
You mean on the documentary?
On that, also the same with the NIST report. They've rewritten it several times. They've gotten to the point now, NIST just throws their hands up and says, we have no idea what made Building 7 go down, because they can't scientifically explain it. Even though Silverstein went on national TV and said, we pulled the building, and he collected a very large chunk of insurance
money. I know
money.
about that quote.
No, he says there was a lost
let's
leg.
pull it. It being
we made the order.
He
said we made the order, and then we watched the building.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull building 6.
We have to be very careful how we demolish building 6. We were worried about the building 6 coming down and then damaging the slurry wall, so we wanted that particular building to fall within a certain area.
There's a certain excitement in the air of bringing the last structure down at the World Trade Center.
Pelted by debris when the North Tower collapsed, 7 burned until late afternoon, allowing occupants to evacuate to safety.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Eyewitness reports.
No,
Sure
that's not true. And he never said pull it as in pull the building down. He said pull it as in pull the...
Well, that's what he said later, because if you would have been called on it...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We got to
have other people.
Thank you for at least addressing
Okay.
Thank you. You're a sport.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's
Thanks, Bob. I'll let you guys know when
Part of the reason we went into Iraq was the main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't. What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing. 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 Nothing.